leadership presentation series. And I just want to let you know, for those of you who have come into the room here, just a reminder that if you can please get your code scanned, it's going to allow you to collect your CEUs for this presentation here. I'm Rob Birtles. I am the secretary for your board, duly elected yesterday. So basically, this is my third term on your board here, and it's actually been an honor to work with the Environmental Operator Certification Program. It's been a fantastic experience. But today, we have Jason Hindson, who Jason's first exposure to confined spaces was as a career firefighter in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia. He was an instructor and one of the leads of his department's technical rescue team. From there, he worked for Metro Vancouver, formerly Greater Vancouver Regional District, as the corporate senior safety supervisor. He is now the technical director for Orca Health and Safety Consulting, assisting clients throughout the province, specializing in solutions for all aspects of confined space work. Through instructing and participating in entries around the world, he maintains up-to-date approach to rescue and confined spaces overall. So I just want to take the time to welcome Jason to the EOCP 2023, and Jason's going to talk to us. He's actually done one other thing here. He's invited you to ask questions throughout his presentation, but we have a microphone, so I'm going to bring you the microphone that you can speak into. For people online, send your questions into EOCP, and Stephanie will state those questions so that you can have your questions answered. So thank you to Jason.
Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. That's on. Okay, so we're here to talk about confined space entry and rescue. To me, they're one and the same thing. They need to complement each other. They need to work together. A lot of people think rescue is this piece over here in case something goes wrong. For me, I'm thinking about potential incidences, how I'm going to rescue throughout my whole entry. And there is benefits to that. Hence the word I have sense up there. There's benefits to manpower, benefits to equipment, things that complement the procedures to make rescue easier. So it's sort of a bit of a philosophy. Okay. So we'll go through that. As it was mentioned, if you have a question throughout, just put your hand up. Not a big deal. I think sometimes it's easier to ask questions during the presentation than trying to hold everything up till the end. Okay. So I have no problem with that at all. So, as I said, I'm ex-career firefighter. I'm also a qualified person, so I do confined space hazard assessments and entry procedures. So I have the unique perspective of I get to write paperwork for spaces, I get to apply to WorkSafe for variances, and then I do a lot of rescue standby as well. So I'm at a lot of holes. I've also done my EOCP training. So with that perspective at all, hopefully I can bring it all together and provide some benefit to you guys attending my presentation. Okay, so technical rescue. When everyone hears about confined space, they think, oh, technical rescue. Some people are all over it. Some people aren't too excited about it. It gets really, really complicated. Okay, it doesn't need to be complicated. This is where it gets complicated when we get into rope rescue teams and we're worried about vectors and monopods and all this fancy stuff. When I come in to train a organization, I avoid this stuff at all costs because it's harder to maintain. Okay. The other thing you have to think of is your staff is rescue for them. It's not for everyone. Okay. Some people get really nervous. They won't be able to operate. So both those climbs we did in a rope, that's over 80 meters. So 250-foot climb. Okay. So is your team comfortable with saying, hey, I'm going to be responsible for someone else's life. Hey, I'm going to be able to go in there and help them. You can't push workers into that. There's a reason there's a lot of things in the fire service, even the military, like to be a paratrooper. That's a volunteer activity. You don't get forced into it. They want to make sure you're good for it. So we have to think about that too. So by the end of the session, I want you to understand the requirements for rescue from a confined space. Okay. So what's required from a WorkSafe BC perspective? But I do this globally, and even though it may not be in writing, it's pretty much the same everywhere. The different methods and types of confined space rescue. So how I break it down and how I categorize things to help decide what I'm going to do for rescue. And the basic strategies that can be implemented to reduce the risk and resources required when providing confined space rescue. So again, you're not just sitting there, you're participating in the entry. Okay. Okay. So confined space rescue is part of a system. It's not this side thing where you have sitting. Even if you decide to hire an outside rescue team, I don't want to see them sitting over there in lawn chairs. They should be participating in the entry. Your rescue is part of your training program for your organization. It's part of the equipment selection program. Hey, where can I get a piece of equipment that's going to help me for work as well as rescue? That saves money. The guys are using it every day. They stay more proficient on it. Okay. Well-planned rescue standby services can have a much wider impact than just a successful rescue. Builds confidence, makes people want to go in and work, right? We've all been in jobs before where you get there and you're like, oh, I have no idea how they're going to rescue me. Okay, let's go in. Pardon? No, you have a right to a safe workplace. That includes knowing what they're going to do to get you out, right? A lot of water treatment places aren't too bad. Sanitary sewer, wastewater treatment places, not too bad. But when we get into 4 or 5 story digesters and stuff, and some of these daft tanks with baffles and going in and out of things, you want to make sure they can get you out of there. The confined space program, hazard assessment, entry procedure, and rescue plan must complement each other. So often I don't see that. Okay. So often they're completely different. So they don't talk about using Fall Pro in the entry procedure, but the rescue plan's all about a non-entry rescue, and we only have 2 people, so we're not ready for spinal. Someone's got to think as they write this all together that it all complements each other. They all dovetail into each other. So, quick thing on rescue fatalities. Okay. So there's 3 big common ones I'm going to show. I think 3. BC ambulance. Okay. Lost 2 personnel. This is on top of losing 2 mine workers. Okay. Simple sum. Going in. Guy went in. Didn't measure the air. Didn't have a fan. He collapsed. Next day, where is he? Buddy went out to find him. Called 911. Went down to help him. He went down, and then the ambulance just followed. Okay. As a result of this, there was a big uptake on awareness training for ambulance. You'll see ambulance stand back a lot more. Not their fault because it's not their lane yet to get into. Okay. Oh, how do I go back? Okay. Barges. Okay. So this is just one of them. There's many barge incidences throughout BC. We're known for them, unfortunately. And my experience in the industry is not changing. There's still people going in barges, relying on what the color of their cigarette is, if what the oxygen level is, stuff like that. People welding, not taking care of themselves. In this particular instance, I was a career fireman at the time, and it shook up the fire service, right? Fire departments is that group of people that do stuff that no one else is doing, right? We didn't have our act together. A fireman even went down in this incident. Okay, so it really increased training. And then we all know about the mushroom plant. Okay. These are I know none of these are really water treatment, wastewater treatment, but to me, it's all the same. Well, I'll say it's shit. Whether it's mushroom and I'm pushing through fertilizer, or I'm a wastewater treatment plant, same stuff. We're talking about organic material decomposing. We're talking in barges, we're talking about oxygen going down because of rust. It's all the same thing, right? And we have to keep that in mind. So unfortunately, a lot of workers died here. Again, no procedures, no hazard assessment, no monitoring, no fan, and ultimately no rescue. Okay, so the big statistic everyone knows about, it's about 6 out of 10 confined space fatalities would be rescuers. That makes sense a little bit. We're a close-knit team. That was one of the things I really enjoyed working at Metro Vancouver. So we had a team, right? All the operators got together, shoot the shit in the morning. I think that makes us do what we want to do, working together type thing. And you see Buddy down there, he's froth at the mouth, he's convulsing. What do you want to do? You want to help him. And if you haven't been trained properly, haven't been given the tools what to do, you just may take that step down to go help them. Now you become a casualty yourself. Okay. So how are these incidents preventable? Okay. 3 basic things we always say, even if you don't have paperwork, although we all know we need our paperwork, Even if you don't have paperwork, there's 3 things that would prevent the majority of deaths in confined space. If you sit back and read what happened, you'll agree. Air monitoring. A lot of deaths, people walk into a space, collapse immediately. Just find out a baseline. What's going on there? Then we have a lot of deaths because the atmosphere changes while we're in there. Ventilation. Right? And the last one we're talking about here is in case we have an issue in a confined space, this includes medical, effective rescue. And I say effective because I'm tired of seeing tripods in the back of pickup trucks under 400 pounds of gear, or guys don't want to set it up. Guys don't want to take the time to set it up. So effective, or guys haven't trained properly enough. That is why I always add the word effective to rescue, is we can actually perform it. So if you think of all the different things that have happened, monitoring, ventilation, effective rescue applied properly would have prevented the majority of deaths in confined spaces. Okay, key regulations. So WorkSafe BC is who regulates us, okay? The employer must provide for the services of rescue persons when a worker enters a confined space. That is black and white. We must follow that. Okay. Sometimes you'll have some areas, smaller communities, the fire department not only is not willing, they are not capable of providing a confined space rescue. They don't have to. It's in the regulations that the employer has to. So I live on Vancouver Island, and we're seeing this more and more up island, not just in confined spaces, but we're getting more tower cranes to build 4-story walk-ups and that. There's no high-angle rescue team for them because there's no career fire department. They don't have to. So if you're in a smaller municipality and the local department's not on the page, or we're worried about them responding because they're on a call-out, which is not their fault, it's the system, it's really important that we make sure we provide for rescue of our own workers. It's required by law. Okay. Sometimes no one else is coming. You are it. Okay. If the rescue persons are employees of another firm or agency, such as fire department, there must be a written agreement. So this is something I've seen a little bit more. I'll just mention in case some of you use this. Some municipalities will use their local fire department for standby rescue. The really important thing is you make sure it's a true standby rescue model, not a 911 model. The second a fire department is employed to, or asked to provide rescue for your confined space services, they're now acting not in a 911 model, they're acting as a rescue supplier. That means they need to be called before you go in, called when you come out. They need to know the hazard assessment. I have WorkSafe officers right now making sure that that fire department actually comes and does a rescue drill with the crew before the work starts. So you use fire department, that's fine, but just make sure that they're responding as a rescue team or available as a rescue team, not just, oh, if you call 911, we'll come. Okay. So effective, what does effective mean to me? Simply providing rescue services is not enough. It needs to be effective. Okay. Training, the right equipment, knowing what the hazards are. Okay. Due diligence is key. We all know that's the big thing. We have to show the intent. We have to show that we've been planning for it. We're prepared for it. We had a meeting about it. Okay. So examples of non-effective rescue. You may identify a few of these. It's fine. There's gaps in every system. We're here to learn to plug these gaps. So lack of or improper training. Okay. Make sure you get a training provider that understands your type of industry and what you may want. And you have open discussions. You don't just hire someone to come in and do training. They show up with their box of ropes. Have you talked about cable systems? Have you talked about snap hooks, SRLs, David arms? There's lots out there. So you want to make sure the training matches what you want to have. And not just for the day, because lots of times I'll see a company come in and train someone. Good luck asking to repeat that 2 months later. It needs to be basic, simple things that are easily repeatable. Inadequate plan. So I have a rescue plan. It's in front of me. It's a non-entry rescue. Yeah, I'm just going to winch the guy up. But the guy's gone in a chamber and he's got 20 feet to the back corner. It's only 10 feet deep. I'm not winching him out of there. Or he's climbing in there. Now he falls. He has a spinal emergency. But we only have one guy outside to go get him. That's all inadequate. We haven't properly thought about what may happen. Incompetent team members. I don't mean this in a bad way, but team members who are not up to the challenge. Physically, mentally, training. They're not attending the practices, right? And maybe they're not, I don't mean because they're skipping out, but they're away. So we need to schedule things differently. So is everyone on the team equally competent? Okay, we have to rely on each other. Lack of or improper equipment. So do you have the right equipment? If you're using davit arms, are the anchors properly inspected every year, recertified? Okay. Yeah, good. Okay. Is your self-retracting lifeline recertified? Is it working properly? Are your ropes inspected? Okay. All the right stuff. If there's a potential for a fall, do you have a spine board? All the different things. So what sort of rescue am I going to need? Do I have the right equipment? I should have a D there. Not prepared for potential or foreseeable incidences. So I'm going to go back to Fall Pro and go back to getting caught in a piece of machinery. What do we see happening in there? Medical emergencies are included. Okay. Long response times. So I often get asked this, hey, can we use our team from across the way to provide rescue? Like we have 2 or 3 utility teams out on the road today. Well, how far are they? Can't guarantee they're going to have that wave of green light. They're not in a fire truck with that transmitter changing all the lights to green for them. And even then, that's not a guarantee. So how far are they across the plant? If you're all in the plant, then obviously it works. But can we contact them quickly? Can they get there quickly? Right? Are they going to have gear pre-set up? So when I have a team that's at a plant somewhere, I expect them to either have a crash station if there's multiple entries, or that gear should be set up at that space, okay, to reduce the response time. And equipment not set up immediately deployable. Okay. So risk assessment. WorkSafe BC says the employer, and then this is under Part 4 of the regulations, not confined space because it's general rescue. The employer must conduct a risk assessment in any workplace in which there's a need to rescue or evacuate workers. If the risk assessment required by subsection 1 shows a need for evacuation or rescue, appropriate written procedures must be developed and coordinated with the team. Okay. We got to implement it. It can't just be a piece of paper there. And then you have to have specific procedures. So this one only shows confined space, but there's high angle. There's a number of different things that WorkSafe requires you to have rescue plans for. Confined spaces there. So it's not just under Part 9. It's under Part 4 is saying you have to provide for rescue. Okay, the risks. So for me, there's many different risk models. We've all seen the rainbow matrix, right? All the different colors. I like to break it down simple. I'm ex-infantry, so some guys may take offense to this, but I'm simple-minded, right? Keep it simple, keep it easy. So for me, risk is the likelihood that event will happen and what's the consequence when it does. Okay. In my opinion, we can lower the likelihood with certain controls. The consequence stays the same. Confined spaces deserve special attention, and some people don't see that. We need to accurately identify the risks of the space and the tasks. What are we doing in the space? People forget that. They'll have a hazard assessment entry procedure for inspection. What are we doing in the space? Like a zip cutter. That's like a mini grenade when that blade lets go, or a grinder. Are you prepared for that? Is the right controls in place? We're climbing around. We're on scaffolding inside of a confined space. What happens if you fall off it? Okay. The very nature of a confined space means an incident will likely have a greater consequence than the same activity outside of the space. So if you have a heart attack inside of a confined space, think of the difference if you have a heart attack on the plant floor. Completely different. Same incident for the most part, or the root cause of it, but you're going to have a delayed response. So here's a little example just to put some things in perspective. Ladders. I hear all the time, yeah, we don't need Fall Pro when we go up and down a ladder. When I fall off the ladder on the left, it's going to hurt, but everyone can come help me. When I fall off the ladder on the right, even the local fire department and definitely the ambulance will refuse to help me because it's a confined space. And if they're not qualified in confined space, there's an issue. Also, a lot of us in this room, for sure, would not fit out of that manhole on a spine board. So I know of one organization where in the last 5 years, they've had 2 falls off of ladders in confined space, and one resulted in spinal injury, permanent spinal injury. Need to be hooked up. Okay, different consequence. Climbing over obstructions. Stepping over is not a big deal, but sometimes you see guys climbing over big 48-inch pipes, stuff like that in a space. They're 6 feet off the ground. What happens if they slip and fall? It's not the same as slipping and falling at the plant, just out in the like a pipe gallery. It's a lot different when I'm down in a confined space. Okay. Anything else? All right. Drowning, engulfment. You can't escape as easy. There's a lot of hazards that become a lot worse when we're inside of confined space. So we need to think about them. Okay. Okay, planning your entry, planning your rescue. Any questions so far? No? So again, based on the space and the tasks, I keep bringing this up because all the time I see the tasks change in a confined space and no one's thought about them in regard to updating the hazard assessment, entry procedure, and the rescue plan. So in my hazard and assessment entry procedure, if you're going to be using fall protection inside the space, I actually state under rescue, the rescue team must be prepared to retrieve a suspended worker. So I know how many of you guys are into rescue who've tried that. When I hang a guy in front of you on a lanyard, if you don't know what you're doing, it may take a while to get him down off that, to pick him off. Are you able to do that? What anchors are going to do that with? Okay. Potential incidents that may occur. So what is foreseeable? So we always have medical emergencies, slips, strains. I try to take fall out of it by saying you're hooked up when you at least go up and down the ladder, you can disconnect at the bottom. I'm fine with that. Okay. What sort of tools are you using? All those things you have to think of. Is your first aid kit prepared for those type of things? Do you have the right first aid kit? Right. We're allowed to use tourniquets now. How many of you have updated your level 1 first aid kits to allow for tourniquet use? We're all trained in it now. We should be using it. Later, sure. Must identify the resources required for rescue. So how many people do I need? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down so that you guys have a basic understanding what I'm thinking about. Okay. What sort of skills do they need? I mentioned the pickoffs. What sort of equipment? Single davit arm, other high points. Do we need to bang anchors in? So now we got a Hilti with us, right? Expansion anchors in. All this sort of stuff has to be thought of. And the entry procedure must complement the planned method of rescue and vice versa. So a big one for me again is we're going to non-entry rescue. You're hooked up when you go up and down the ladder. You stay in the cone of happiness. You stay hooked up. To me, the cone of happiness is that as you look from the high point, it goes down into the space. We have to stay within 22.5 degrees from center for an SRL to work. It can't rub against the side. The second you go in the space and you're outside that cone of happiness or you disconnect, we now need an entry rescue. That changes everything. Response time, number of personnel, type of gear, all things we should think of. And every worker should be aware of so that if they're going to go in that space and move somewhere else and render the rescue plan ineffective, we need to stop and talk about it. Okay? Remember, it's a system. It all works together. Okay? Everything from acquiring new equipment to training to the documents, it all works together. Okay, rescue factors. So how can you reduce the risk? So I gave you guys a handout. This will pass around. It's got on the back side, it's got 4 colored circles. I just see people hanging out in front. So this is just a way to look at it. Okay. So to me, there's 4 factors I look at to have a successful rescue. Time. It's a really important factor for everything we do. How long does it take? The injured worker. So what characteristics of the injured worker will make a rescue successful or not successful? What can we learn about that even before an incident happens? How many of these things can we deal with before a rescue is needed? The space. How well do you know the space? Usually for operators who are providing rescue for their fellow workers, this isn't an issue. And I will always say I would rather take a group of operators and spend a week and train you how to do a rescue than take a group of firemen. My lockout training in the fire department consisted of, yeah, there's 4 locks in that Tupperware container in the glove box. What's that for? Lockout. Got it? Yeah, okay. That's really what it was. They don't know creaks. They don't know groans. They don't understand what it means when your valve crunches when you close it. They don't understand the whine off the PRV. All that stuff is critical stuff that operators know that, in my opinion, will assist in a rescue. Will widen your berth of, hey, I know that whine's okay. That's supposed to do that rather than, shit, that valve's going to let go. No, it's not. Okay. So understanding the space is really critical to me. And the rescuer. So factor with them. So we're going to go through each of these. So 4 critical factors. So time. Rescue operations are time critical. No doubt about that. Based on the injury, are we in RTC for the old school people, rapid transport category, right? Do we have a deadly bleed? Do we have a heart attack? What's going on? The time required for initiating rescue is an important factor. Make sure you're ready to go. So one thing at Metro, we create a mantra, be ready to go. Ready to go means you've thought about the space, you've talked about the plan, your gear's set up, all that sort of stuff. Am I ready to deploy immediately? Time to complete the rescue is dependent on the type of emergency. Okay. So do we have spinal? Do we have guy up and over pipes? All that sort of stuff. So notification of the rescue team. How long does it take to notify the rescue team? On the radio, just on the other side of the plant. Throughout the day, have you been checking your radio to make sure comms is still good? Do you know your plant well enough or know where the dead spots are? A lot of smaller municipalities, where's your cell phone dead spots? What have you done to compensate for that? Travel time. So once the rescue team's notified, how long do they take to travel to get to the site? Right? Do they have to get gear on the way? Are you relying on another team and another pickup truck that's just down the road? Or are the people right there helping out with the entry? How long does it take to assess the space? So how quickly can your rescuers assess the space to make sure it's safe for a rescue, to make sure other people aren't endangered? This comes to the rescue team understanding the hazard assessment entry procedure even before work begins, and then understanding what could have gone wrong, what are the tasks, how do I make sure it's safe for my rescuers to enter, so I don't become one of those 6 out of 10. Setup time. How long does it take to set up gear? Right? So is it already set up? I'm a big fan of having gear set up that complements the entry, such as hooked up as I go up and down, and that gear transitions into rescue gear. Some of the municipalities I've worked with, they have the fire department providing rescue, and fire department's big on, yeah, we're not using your stuff. Like, why not? Well, it's not our stuff. We don't trust it. But you guys are part of the same city. So when they show up, they want to rip down everything and build all their own stuff. So what we've done with some municipalities, we've actually had the fire department come out and we've trained them on how to use the David arm with self-attracting lifeline because they don't use that stuff. And we made sure everything's got a nice big sticker, and the fire department's informed every year of the annual recertification. They can borrow that gear anytime they want. So the whole idea is when they show up, there's a lot less setup time because that stuff's ready to go. How long does it take to get people into the space? Right? That's a big thing. I do a lot of rescue competitions. One of the big things we're graded always on is patient contact. When is that first person in the space? Safely, of course, but how long does it take to get in? Patient locate, access, and assessment. So you know where the patient even is? Crawl spaces is an issue. So there's some bigger space that I go into, I actually put in the entry procedure. At all times, the standby person must know exactly where the entrant is. At all times. And that communication needs to go back and forth. Because if I show up and you go show me where he is, locating him and then accessing him is going to be a lot quicker. Okay. How is the worker in there? So I've done some work in small pipes and we tell them you have to enter feet first. Why? Because to access you, that's the only way to get out of you. Okay. And then getting the patient out. How long is it going to take you to get out? Is your team in shape? Sort of a rescue factor, but how long is it going to take me to lift you and get you out of the space? Right? Are we like 6 stories down the wall of a battleship or something like that? All that stuff takes time. Are you prepared for that? And then obviously it takes time to transfer to a higher medical level. So once you're out of the space, do we need to get to the ground to get to BCAS, right? The people who know what they're doing for medical stuff? Or are we just handing you off? How are we taking care of that transfer? Okay, so those are all time things. For me, when I look at that, I try to figure out how many of those things can I take care of before we even start work, or minimize the amount of time. It's just thinking ahead. And this will become habit. Okay, this isn't a big thing to do. Most people already think like this and don't even realize it, I think. So the injured worker, focal point of the rescue. Assign tasks and associated hazard and controls. What are they? Are they doing them? Right? This is where the standby person becomes critical. And this is why the standby person, I don't want to just sit there looking at their phone, interact with the entrant. What were they doing at the time of the incident? That's going to help my assessment. Were they doing an authorized task? If it's unauthorized, then there's more danger to my rescuers. How many people are in the space? I want to limit how many people are in the space. Okay. Been to some spaces where they're doing like a bid meeting and the engineer or whoever's in charge of that bid doesn't want to go through it 10 times. So they invite everyone into the space at once. No. So you take one in at a time or use a camera, use Zoom. I don't care. I want to reduce the number of people in the space. I always hear, well, if I got more people in the space, do I need more rescuers? And my answer is always, how many people can you get out of a manhole at once? So you better be able to triage. That's what it comes down to. Doesn't matter for me whether there's 30 people in the space or one person in the space from a rescue perspective. I'm just going to triage you and take out the people that need to come out first. But we should keep that number down. Where are they located? Do you know? Do they wander off? Okay. Are they doing something they shouldn't be doing? Are they behind a tight pipe? Do they need to go on the backside of that pipe? I'll say in my procedures, minimize time on the backside of the pipe. It's harder to get you out. What's the likely condition? Okay. Mechanism of injury. We always want to know, do we have an idea? Often we'll have to actually get to the patient and ask and see what's going on. But do we have a general idea what's going on? And grab and go or complete package required. So can we just grab them and pull them out? We're done? Or no, now we got to take care of them, right? Now we got to try to do CPR. We got to try to weave them in and out of that space. Okay, the space itself. Hazard of the space identified, assessed, and controls assigned. So everyone understands that you have to have a hazard assessment and entry procedure to enter a confined space. It must be task related. So work safe, some of the people hear about work safe regs and they roll their eyes a bit. Oh, fuck, yeah. Pardon my French, sorry. And they roll their eyes a bit and like, geez. But, you know, I've done rescue globally. I teach in Europe a lot. And I have to say that WorkSafe BC's perspective, at least, is one of the best I've seen. And the reason that is we set our alarm points, or we have this thing called clean respirable air. The idea is we've set a baseline, and when that changes, we should action on it. The sky's not falling. Like if I get 10 CO, I'm in a confined space, the sky isn't falling. But the way it's system set up in BC is you should stop and think, where's that CO coming from? If I'm in a PRV station, I'm just, you know, cleaning my filters or something, then I probably shouldn't have any CO in the space, and I should stop and pause and think about where it's coming from, what I can do to correct it. That's the perspective we have in BC. However, if I'm zip cutting in there, okay, now I expect it, but over a certain level, I should do something about it. Okay. So when you're doing a hazard assessment, entry procedure, make sure it's according to WorkSafe. And again, there's a lot of good perspectives of how we do things in BC. So what's the size of the space? How big is it? Where am I going to get him? How far do I need to drag him? Configuration of the space. Is there baffles? Like, are we in an oil water separator, right? Is there piping within the space? Is there holes within the space? Is there a space within a space? This happens a lot in barges. Access availability and the size. Is there only one access? Is there multiple accesses? Is there better access to rescue them out of? Are you aware of that? Right? Once you get them out of the space, where are you? Are you on top of a 10-story tower, or can we get them out through the bottom? Yes. Sorry.
Surveillance in spaces while people are in there doing work.
Okay, so the question, just for online people, was the question is there any video surveillance going on while people are doing work in confined spaces? It is a thing now. I hear it's going on in Alberta right now. And actually what they're doing is they actually have companies I've heard of that are actually providing standby services via cameras set up. So you have like a central standby section. So the person actually key codes as they go into the space and key codes as they come out. So that sort of thing is starting to happen. I do believe there's still some gaps in it. I don't really believe in standby by phone. I think that's ludicrous. I think you should always have a number 2 at the hole to respond, but it is happening. We're also experimenting within the rescue world. We're actually delivering 100-meter rope bags with drones and stuff like that, or taking it up and dropping anchors. So it's coming for sure. So. And you can actually use it for a recce too, from a rescue perspective. Where are they? You know, they're using it in Morocco and a lot of places like that. There's a lot of video surveillance too for looking through accident scenes. Okay, the rescuer. Okay, stress, emotional impacts. So how they behave when they see an incident. Okay, you know, it's always amazing. You can see someone and you think they're going to be cool, calm, collective when something bad happens, and they fall apart. Or the opposite. They're going to be a bag of hammers if something happens. And they're the one that takes control and brings it all together. So I don't think there's a way to predict this. It's only through time. But through good training and make sure the rescue is prepared, it should reduce the stress. It's like my son's just started university this month. And by taking him to school ahead of time, showing him things, where he's going to park, what he's going to do, he's got some learning difficulties. And the idea is to lower that stress from him. And preparation is a big thing, but it's still going to negatively impact them. So this is the job of a good team leader, is to keep people together. Physical limitations. So what sort of shape are you in? Should you be doing rescue? I guarantee you, climbing a 100-meter piece of rope under my own power means I better be in shape, because I'm not going to get up otherwise. Can you lift a guy? Can you pull a guy out? Are you in shape? This is why the regulations say you should practice in the type of space you need to rescue from. Okay, I get it. We can be a team. We can all be there together. But if you got that lone rescuer going in, you want to make sure that they don't have any physical limitations. Medical's another one. See lots of old school guys. They're all over there. They want to help. Awesome. But medically, maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe they got a heart condition or something like that. It's hard to turn them down. Find another spot for them on the team. Only one person needs to go in. But we have to keep that in mind too. Okay, that's all part of effective to me. Can they actually perform the rescue? Are they in shape? Okay. Effective team operations. So how's your leadership? How well does the team operate? This is a whole new thing now. It's getting really big. In November, I'm part of another organization, and we're doing a 40-hour training course on how to effectively lead a rope rescue team. 40 hours of just that. All put yourselves in different positions, and we purposely fail stuff. We purposely fail you and see how you respond. Right? So effective team operations comes through drills, comes through practice, comes through good communication, right? Mutual respect. So we have to make sure that's up. Adequately trained and equipped. So is the rescuer trained in the type of rescue we have to do? So think about this when you hire someone for training. For me, before I implement training, I want to think, what sort of spaces do I have? Okay. What sort of space am I entering? What sort of space am I going to have contractors do? So maybe that 1 in 5 year entry, I'm going to farm out to a contractor. It's way easier. That's fine. Then what sort of things do we need for entry? What sort of gear do we need for rescue from these spaces? Where are the commonalities? Can we get away with a lot of collections type work? Let's be honest, is David armor tripod and self-retracting lifeline with a winch in it. As long as we're straight up and down and we're in the utility system, usually covers it. Okay, well then my training should complement what we're deciding. Don't have someone come in and do a whole week of ropes and knots, and you're not going to do it, right? There's no need for that type of rescue. So it's important that you look at your system to be prepared and think about what you need generally, so everyone is trained for that. Okay, not to say hanging from ropes and all that's fun, but is it effective use of time? It costs money, right? Competency. So this is a big thing I always ask now. When you get a contractor coming in, what do we always ask before they do work for us? Certification. So we ask, are you trained? Right? Show me your confined space entry ticket. Awesome. I add something else now. I make contractors email me back and say they are trained and competent. WorkSafe doesn't have expiry dates for training, unless it's like first aid, forklift. There's a few things there, but confined space, fall pro, there's no expiry date. Contractors will put on when they train you. A common one's 3 years. But if you got trained day one and you never did that task again for 2.5 years because you're a small muni, you're doing non-entry work all the time, and now suddenly you're being thrown in and you're a month away from it being expired, how competent do you think you are? Competency means your ability to perform what you've been trained to do. So I always ask contractors to reply back to me for anything. I know this is a bit off of rescue here, but I think it fills in for rescue in a way. Please state in the email that your workers, by name, are trained and competent. 90% of the time I get a call back, yeah, I'll give them on the next course. Thanks. Means they don't have confidence in their competency. It's no one's fault. If you don't do it, you lose it. So it happens. Okay. So how competent are your rescuers in the type of rescue they need to perform? Communication. How's good is your communication? Whether it's the type of communication, like verbal, radio, whatever, or method in regards to how concise is your communication methods to keep things flowing and moving well, right? Do you have codes? right? How have you worked that all out? How are we going to do that? And complexity of the systems chosen and deployed. So like a picture I showed you before with a little gin pole, with all the guy lines, with the main and safety, with the drop loop off the end. Or do we literally just have a snap hook with a cable and a winch? Okay. The company I work with, they just went in to help a company with the rescue, and to make it even simpler, they still need to use ropes because we're dealing with the heights of over 100 feet. Cables just aren't practical; they're too heavy. But what they did is all the ropes they got, they had sewn terminations put in by the company that supplied the ropes. No knots. There's a benefit to that. You may think, well, we should be able to tie a knot. Yeah, but they decided to take knots out of it. So now there's not a 2-hour lecture and ongoing anxiety. Do I know how to tie my knot? Because I'm just going to put that carabiner through the loop. Then they put a keeper in there so the carabiner can't come out. Okay, so we can, I don't want to say dumb, we can simplify our systems so they're more easily to deploy and more easily, the rescuers can remain competent more easily. And that's what we're trying to do. Less uptake and upkeep for it. So the 4 critical factors dictate whether an effective or ineffective rescue occurs. Okay, so just some things to think of. Okay, rescue planning. So rescue method and type. So this is how I break it down. This isn't the way, but I find if I break it down this way, I can sort of steer to the general category I want to be in for rescue. So identifies potential complexity of a rescue. Dictates the size of the team required. I said we're going to talk about that. Like, how many guys do I need on my team to provide an effective rescue? Identifies the required skill set. What sort of training do they need? What equipment do I need? So the first one for me, and it's a hierarchy we actually, a lot of people probably heard from in their entry training as well, is self-rescue. That's always my first option. Hey, can you get out on your own? Right? Yeah, we'll bring up the cable as you come out, but you're not suspended, you're climbing up your own. That's always the first option. Can we do self-rescue? But you're not allowed to have that as your rescue plan. Our rescue plan today is self-rescue. What happens if he can't? But that should be your first strategy. You're not interfering with him. You're not sending a rescuer in. The next one on the hierarchy is a non-entry rescue. Whenever possible, I want to work in a way that allows a non-entry rescue. What that means is a rescuer is not entering the space. So we're set up in a way that I can just winch him out and out we go. Horizontally, we do the same. The only concern is if he passes out on his face, we're going to give him a nose job. So we just have, can I see him? Can I still have visual on him? Okay. Is there obstructions as I'm winching him out? Could he get caught? If there's any potential issue with a non-entry rescue, although we always try it first, then you need to be ready to do an entry rescue if required. But most, definitely collections work, is non-entry rescue. We got a tripod set up of a hole. The guy's in a harness, guy's hooked up. He goes up and down the ladder, hooked up, which means he's always ready to be ready in case he slips off that ladder rung or ladder rung lets go. And then we just switch to winch when we need to pull him out. The third and last one on the hierarchy list is rescue personnel need to enter to retrieve that injured entrant. Okay, it's last on the list because whatever hazards the entrant was exposed to, my rescue team or rescuers are now going to be exposed to the same hazards plus whatever else. So when I'm a rescue team, the hazard assessment entry procedure play an important part of what PPE my rescue team needs, because if the guy's in there on a respirator welding, my rescue team better at least have respirators as well. If he's in there for biohazard, he's got all the Tyvek on, my rescue team better have the same stuff. Asbestos work, yeah. My rescue team will be sitting there with the Tyvek pulled up to their waist at least, ready to go in immediately, not, hey, hang on, I just got to get my shit on while you're in there having a convulsion. Okay. So why is a hierarchy? Complexity. So this is on the handout too, guys, on the opposite side, I think, of the 4 gray circles, just give you some context. So increased complexity. Okay. Not good. Well, it's a sum of team size. The bigger the team, more complex it gets. Training and skill requirements. As they increase, as they get more complex, obviously the whole picture gets more complex. Okay, the equipment you're going to use. Are we in ropes and knots? Are we mechanical advantages? Are we talking about complex MAs? Are we talking about a winch? Okay. I hear often, oh, these davit arms and winches are really expensive. Ropes are cheaper. I guarantee you the training for ropes is a lot more than winches and davit arms. When you look at how much time you need to invest and keep the guys skilled and ready to go. Okay. And they all add up, not only increase complexity, on the other side, it also equals increased cost and risk. Okay. Okay, rescue types. So we have the rescue hierarchy. This is really important, right? Always remember, try to do self-rescue as our first option. We want to work in a way whenever possible that allows a non-entry rescue. Okay, you have to follow the equipment manufacturers. That cable can't rub against the edge. You got to remain in a cone of happiness. It's all in the instructions. If we can't do that, we're going to go into an entry rescue. Okay, so that's our hierarchy there. We have to think about that. When we do entry rescues, we want to think, how do we reduce the complexity of them? Can the guy be on fall pro? We do not want to fall in a confined space. Can we work in a way that the guy's not going to be suspended, or if he is, he doesn't drop more than an inch, he can self-rescue, right? Do you know where he is? How do we reduce that complexity for entry rescues? Now, types. I break them into three basic ones. I have vertical rescues, quite easy, straight up and down, for the most part. Horizontal, straight out to the side, and then a combo of the two. So a combo of a vertical would be I'm down in a manhole, out we go. Horizontal, maybe some smaller reservoirs, as long as you're not too deep in, I can just pull you out, not a big deal. Combo to me would be like a old school PRV, where now the new ones, they put the access in the center so we can get everywhere. But the old style ones where the manhole's over in the far corner and we got to go in and go 15 feet and go across 2 or 3 pipes. I got to get you over and then I got to get you out. The easiest way to do that, the easiest way to do that is to just break it up. I'm going to focus on the horizontal rescue and then the vertical. So vertical. Patient suspended. That's a big thing, right? What are you guys all trained in fall pro all the time? Suspended workers are bad. We do not want to be suspended. You can't be suspended. Some people say more than 5 minutes, more than 7 minutes. It all changes, but we don't want you suspended for a long time. But if it's the quickest way to get out, we will. Now, do we need 1 or 2 lines? So this is something I'm asked a lot. Do I need 1 line or 2 lines on the person? So I break it down really simply. When we're doing stuff, we have something that holds our weight. So I call the main line. And then we have something to back up should my main line fail. So if I'm going in and out of a chamber, my ladder is my main line. It's holding my weight. A failure of the ladder could be a ladder rung gives way, I slip, I fall. So I have fall protection on. Okay. Same as ropes. 1 rope's holding my weight, 1 rope's my backup system. Okay. Now, I'll have people say, well, if I'm in the hole, I'm connected. If you're going to crank me out, I'm only on 1 rope. I'm not on 2, or 1 cable. I'm not on 2. This is where risk comes in. It's a lot less risky to winch you out on that 1 cable that's inspected annually, recertified, double-checked, all that stuff, than to put a 2nd rope on you. Okay, so I sort of use a process map to show this, to talk to the guys about how to do this. The big critical thing, though, for the rescue world for us is greater or less than 10 feet. Oh, got a double one there. Can be completed as non-entry or entry rescue for vertical rescues. So if you have to disconnect, that's fine. You just have to have the personnel to go in the space to collect that person. And then usually it requires a tripod or some other sort of high point. Okay, so whether you use a high up crane, there's rules about that. Just don't go use it. Tripod, gantry crane, I-beam on the roof. Usually when I'm lifting someone out of the space, I need some sort of high point to lift them up and out. Okay, horizontal rescue. So usually it's just to move someone. Okay, does not involve suspending the patient. Okay, doesn't mean you can't hurt them. You got to watch your mechanical advantage, make sure they don't get caught. You can really do some damage pulling on someone with a 4-to-1. Single line rescue. We don't have fall protection. There's no way you're going to fall. If there's a hazard of falling in deeper, then we should be on 2 lines and can be completed as a non-entry or entry rescue. Okay. Just remember that horizontal for me does not mean endless distance. If I can't see whether you've fallen on your face, if I'm worried about flipping you back on your back, we have to think about those things that we may push into an entry rescue. I've done lots of rescues where the guy's hooked up. We're hoping for a non-entry rescue, but we have another rescuer there should it not be successful. We have to look into our hourglass and see what's going on. Okay, combo. Vertical, horizontal, rescue, or vice versa. Okay, so that means we need to pull you across and lift you up, or sometimes we need to move you over and drop you or lift you. It could be a combination of anything, up and over pipes, number of different ways to do this. Worker location not below the access point. That's the biggest thing. They're not in the cone of happiness. Are you prepared for that? Have you tried getting a body up over piping, right? With valves in place, trying to lift someone. It's really difficult, especially if you're in a tight space yourself. What are you going to do? Patient may be suspended in the space. So we touched on this before. What happens if he has fall pro in the space and he's working off scaffolding, he's tied off, slips and falls? Right. There's been stories lots before where guys have fallen in confined space. They took too long to get them, and by the time they got them, they were poached because the space wasn't cool enough, and the guy hung in steam. Right. We need to be able to respond quickly. I really encourage people not to use fall pro in confined space beyond the access, obviously. Okay. Usually an entry rescue because I need to move you over to the access. A combo is always someone's going in. So you can sort of see how we're looking at spaces now. Basic manhole, hey, they're non-entry. Awesome, straight up and down. A lot of the new PRVs and chambers we're building now, they're putting the access in the center and making it nice big 4-foot by 4-foot accesses. I can go either way, I'm good. Right. If I have old school chambers, the manhole on the side, I'm into a combo. I'm going to need to send someone in. That means I need a bigger rescue team. Okay. And then obviously wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants, stuff like that. We're in big spaces and we're not staying hooked up. We're going down and we're going wherever. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Hey, team size and structure. Okay. Team's a big thing. And the benefit of the rescue team too is it builds camaraderie. Right. Gets more discussions going on. A lot more pride develops in work when guys are given this task. So at Metro, not only did every area have teams, we had 2 guys in each area that would come together to make a bigger team. So like we did a 110-foot rescue out of a 24-inch pipe that went underneath the SkyTrain station. We had to go in there and weld. So that job was 100% done in-house, and that costs a little bit of money. I get it. But that camaraderie overflows into the guys' work ethic for all the entries they do. So team. So let's talk about how many people we need for a rescue. So typically we have a rescue leader. We have a standby for rescue. We have a rigger, a rescuer, and first aid. I'm not saying you need all those people. What I'm saying is those roles need to be filled. Okay. So what is the rescue method? Non-entry or entry? That's going to change the size of my team. What are the potential injuries that could occur? If there's a potential spinal injury, I'm sending 2 people in to package that person. And what equipment has to be used? Winch versus rope systems. So I'll break it down really, really simple. I break it up in my rescue plan as who's the rescue leader, who's the standby person, who's the rescuer, because those roles need to be filled. But if I'm doing a basic manhole entry, I'm going in to work on an air valve. Pretty simple. Basically a 4-foot barrel, 22-inch manhole on top. It's a 2-person team to do everything. So one person's going in, the other person outside. I can be the standby person. I can be the rescuer. I can be the rescue leader. I can be the first aid person, because rescue consists of this. Till I get the back of his knees to the edge of the space, and down he goes. I can do it all. Awesome. Now he goes down, he disconnects. Okay, I can't be the rescuer now because I can't go in the hole. So now it's going to change. Oh, geez, he may have spinal, or he's going to have to get up and over pipes. Now I need to send 2 people in. So the roles don't change. What happens is your ability for one person to do multiple roles changes. It's almost like the instant command system with the span of control on that. We have to think about what we're dealing with. Basic incident. For me, 4 firefighters show up, that's fine. Major structure fire, all the same roles are being filled, but we need more hands to get her done. That's how I break it up. Okay. So WorkSafe BC, what do they say about it? So rescue or evacuation from a confined space must be directed by a supervisor who is adequately trained in such procedures or a qualified rescue person. Okay. So can a supervisor of an entry go in the space and do work? Why not? If I have my tailboard talk and I know that the guy outside who's standby knows how to do everything and he's capable of leading the rescue, I have no problem with the supervisor going in the hole. Sometimes he's needed because those PRVs are finicky. However, the rescue leader can never go in the hole because if a rescue happens, the rescue leader needs to be outside. So we have to think about what phase are we in? Are we in a work phase and rescue phase? And we transition from those two. Is it going to complement? Okay, it's not rocket science. A rescue worker must not enter a confined space unless there's at least one additional worker located outside to render assistance. So no matter what, we need a standby person. So the way I like to do it, if possible, is I like the standby person that was there for the entry to, at the very least, remain standby for the rescue, but if possible, become the rescue leader if the skills allow. And rescue leader isn't complicated. It's just, yeah, let's winch them up. Yeah, it's clear. Following the rescue plan, it's not difficult. But that person was there for the whole entry. They have all that intel already to carry on for the rescue rather than dissemination of information, which when that occurs, information gets lost. Okay, for team size again, for high hazard engulfment, entrapment, or other significant health and safety factors, okay? If a rescue cannot be affected by the standby person using a harness, lifeline, lifting equipment, then one or more additional workers must be stationed at the entrance to the confined space, and these workers must be equipped and capable of entering the space and effecting rescue. So this is for a high hazard engulfment. WorkSafe sees these as immediate interventions now. So when you're doing a normal entry to your plant or wherever you are, does the rescue team need to be beside the hole? There it is. Yeah. Okay, so I get some yeah, a couple no's. So if it's just a normal rescue, like let's say when it's an Anasys wastewater treatment plant, that rescue team can be roaming around the whole site all day long. They don't need to be at the hole. As long as the standby person's at the hole and the rescue team was briefed and they know the type of space and everything's set up to prepare, they're there for the toolbox talk, they can be roaming around the plant all day as long as they have effective communications and can effectively respond. However, the second we get into high hazard spaces or engulfment, that means a sudden rush of fluid or solid, like I'm in a grain silo coming in, or entrapment falling further down a funnel, then my rescue team needs to be sitting beside that hole ready to be deployed now. Okay, that's a regulatory requirement, not just you've done a risk assessment. Okay. So here's another question I get asked. So I'm inside of a space. I got 2 guys working inside the space. I like to keep it a 1 if possible. We all know sometimes we have to send 2 people in. That's fine. I'm not here to disrupt the work. We gotta get stuff done. Can one of the guys in this space become a rescuer? Is that allowed? Yeah, for sure. I actually call them rescuer number 2 all the time, and in my rescue panel say a worker that transitions to being a rescuer. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I still need to have an extra rescuer outside should both those guys go down. You always have to. If there's anyone not attached inside that confined space to the system, then I have at least 2 people outside. I have a standby person / leader, and then I have someone to go in and get them. But that's only after I realize that an emergency has happened in the space where it's only hurt 1 person. With that in mind, limit the task where both people can get hurt. So if I have a guy zip cutting, grinding inside of a confined space, I'll tell the second guy, hey, come out for a minute while he's doing that. You don't need to be in there when that grinding wheel lets go. You don't need to be exposed to all those fumes. And then when he's done that, then I'll send the second guy back in. Yes, you got to get in and out. I get that. But if you look at how much you're minimizing the potential if an incident was to occur or being exposed, lots of times I'll see welders, respirator on, welding shield on, everything's great. And here's Joe Blow standing behind me in a baseball cap, handing him welding sticks. Think about it, guys. And it's usually the young guy that doesn't know better. Get him out of the space. Get the welder some tools to hold his sticks. Like, tell him to hold his own sticks. Figure it out. But if I can reduce the time when there's more than one person in the space, or if there is only one person, can it be hooked up? Throughout the whole job, I'm looking at how do I make rescue easy? Okay, training. System-based. Okay. Training can span from at least 1 day to multiple days. Okay. For initial and then followed by ongoing. So everyone wants to come in. Hey, I got this rescue course for you. It's going to take 4 days. Okay. Again, going back, what do I need for my crew? What do I need based on the equipment I'm choosing? You know, talk to someone who understands confined space entry before you just talk to a rescuer. Sometimes these guys are out there, they love the ropes and knots and they want you to have all the newest fancy gear. And it's just not worth it sometimes. Students must be taught how to safely enter a confined space and conduct work before learning how to rescue. I'm really big on this. So when I do rescue training, my first day, if they haven't done it, I will do an entry course. How do you enter a confined space? What are the tips and tricks on monitoring? What are the tips and tricks on ventilation? What's a hazard assessment? What means the task has changed? When do I need to get it reassessed? All this stuff all this good stuff, all you guys know, you should know before you learn how to rescue. And that's why I said before, I'd rather take a group of operators and teach them how to rescue than a group of firemen, because you guys have that industrial foundational knowledge that's so key. So make sure your guys are competent and gals are competent in confined space entry and understand how entry works before you put them into the rescue hot seat. Right? To me, and this sounds morbid, the body recoveries I've been on, it's just work. Rescue to me is just work. But my task is different than inspection, welding, exercising a valve. I'm retrieving someone. And that's how it should be seen. Obviously, a little bit faster, but it's just work. Basic skills taught, including roles, responsibilities, communication, rigging, packaging, and first aid. So does everyone know what they need to do? And records of training have to be kept. So who did that training? So if you hire someone to do training, make sure there's a detailed syllabus on what was trained. Right? When you have training done, make sure there's a rescue plan in place. That rescue plan should make up your training. That's the best way to do a drill. Pull out a rescue plan, we're using it. I have something to measure your performance against to ensure it's effective. I have something to write, yes, we've done it. Okay. Okay, WorkSafe BC equipment and training. Every person assigned rescue duties must be properly equipped and adequately trained to carry out such duties. Bit of a motherhood statement, but it's there. Everyone gets the point. Okay, first aid. At least one member of a rescue team must be trained in first aid and trained to immobilize an injured worker. I always have a hard problem with this one because immobilize is not clear to me. Immobilize does not mean packaged. That's how I read it. And so for me, where I was before, all of our confined space utilities crew, everyone was trained in level 1 first aid, and everyone had the spinal endorsement course. Okay, spinal endorsement isn't what it used to be. Before it used to mean airways, and they've really stripped it down to nothing. A little disappointed about that. But everyone is trained. But at the very least, the person going in to make first contact with the patient needs to be trained in first aid so they can make the right decision what to do. The equipment I do too, I want to touch on this because I don't think I have a slide about it. That little pack you see up in the top right corner, even my first aid equipment is specific to confined space rescue. I do not want to go in a confined space and have what I call a Band-Aid explosion. I do not need 150 various size Band-Aids blowing up in my face when I'm in a confined space. So I'll use a small pack like that. And I have an airway section. I have a deadly bleed section with tourniquets, with the new combat pressure bandages. There's lots of anti-clotting agents. There's lots of different things to do. But the rescue team should have a specific first aid kit to identify the type or to address the type of emergencies they may have in that space. So the equipment's not just ropes, winches, and all that. We should go beyond that. Okay. So does every crew need to be equally trained? What do you guys think? Okay. I sort of base it on what they're doing and what sort of entries they're doing. If most of my entries are non-entry rescues, and we can deal with that, then I'll have a whole group of rescuers train at a different level than another group. However, before we initiate an entry rescue, it takes a bit more planning and we get a different crew in. You may have a group of guys that are extra keen in your group, and I'm going to seize the moment and I'm going to capitalize on that keenness. And I may have someone trained at a different level, as long as you're not putting them in a situation they're not trained for. So sometimes that's a strategy too, from a cost perspective, time perspective. Does everyone need that same level of training? And then through that, I build leaders within my group to help train other guys. Again, like I mentioned before, it's a system. Okay, equipment selection. Configuration design of the space is a big thing. Method and type of rescue, non-entry, entry, vertical, non-vertical. What are the potential injuries? So as you pick your equipment, you should think about this. It's really important for me, and this is a strategy, when I train a group how to do rescue, the day they're finished that training, that equipment is there. Okay, please do that. I don't like seeing a group trained and then, oh yeah, it's going to be 3 more months till we get the gear in. That's not really effective. The guys forget how to use it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't create a lot of value in what they're doing by saying, yeah, I've trained you all this great stuff. Now I'm going to take my toys and go home. Hopefully your toys arrive soon. Okay. Small little thing, but it's these small things that build camaraderie in a team. Okay. Potential use for entry and rescue activities. So can I use the gear to complement my entries? Right? Can I use it while we're working? And then is it going to complement rescue? Don't get 2 sets of gear. Really think about that. If you're going to install davit arms are great, but are you prepared to have those, I hate to say it, those anchors recertified by an engineer every year? Even the sleeves that drop into concrete, it's considered a suspended anchor, right from DBI Sella. Those anchors must be recertified by an engineer every year. Okay, or an engineer needs to be involved in every 3 years. I'm okay. What are you doing about it? Compared to a tripod, I love temporary anchors. I love wrapping I-beams. I love wrapping gantry cranes, using beam clamps, all that stuff, because that's going to take stuff off my plate from a maintenance perspective. So I'm considering all that stuff when I choose my equipment. How do I make my job easier? How do I make the guy after me's job easier? How do I limit the admin I need? Okay. Checking times, right? Okay. Documentation. So we all know confined space is very heavily document laden. Last year, I talked to you guys about 922s and applying to WorkSafe and all that sort of stuff. I promise not to talk about that today. That's not the fun stuff. But documentation, when we're doing an entry, what's the hazard assessment? Again, what's it based on? What tasks am I doing in the space? The entry procedure. So to me, the hazard assessment is the ingredient list. The entry procedure is the recipe, step by step, how I'm going to do the entry. Isolation lockout procedures. Okay. MSDS, SDSs. I always ask this about first aid attendants too when I see them on site. When was the last time you reviewed the top 10 chemicals you use on site? Their SDSs for them? What do you mean? Do you know what to do if someone gets a spill in their eyes? Right? It's an important part of what a first aider does is understanding what someone may be potentially exposed to. Entry permit. Okay. There's times when WorkSafe says you need an entry permit and don't, but if you don't need one, you need an entry log. I'm a big believer. We use an entry procedure 100% of the time and structure it in a way to complement the entry to make things easier. Okay, if you're interested in talking about it, I'm more than happy to share what I use. But it plays a big part for me for every entry. And then a written rescue plan. So a written rescue plan isn't something you're going to be pulling out and saying, oh, geez, they're hurt. Hang on. Step one. No, it should be up here, but it's used for drills. It's used for training. So we have a set training matrix, okay? And you can add cheat sheets to it. So my rescue plan at the back page, I have 10 quick steps to confirm during a rescue. So make it work for you. But you have to have a written rescue plan that matches the space. Okay, must minimize risk. Documentation, potential for injuries, medical emergencies must be considered. I see this all the time. People haven't thought about a fall or what we're doing in this space. Program can be used for more general applied controls. So what I mean by that is the hazard assessment entry procedure is specific to the space. For rescue stuff, I believe that you should always wear a harness into every confined space, no matter what you're getting into. It's a rarity. Maybe some of the tanker truck work I do, we don't, because we can't get into the hole with a harness on, and we're cutting through the side anyways. There's no need for it, but a harness is always required. If it's asbestos work, then put the harness underneath your Tyvek, because I know we're worried about contaminating things. If it's biohazard, put the harness underneath your Tyvek. You don't have to have it on top. I have no problem with that. It's just going to rip out if we have to lift you up. Okay. So for general stuff for the program, things like that are really big. You will always wear a harness. You will always use a permit. The permit must have a rescue aspect to it. That's where you can look at broad scope things that affect all of your entries. So two things I see lacking in programs a lot for confined space is a robust rescue section that covers training, how often you need to be trained, what we're being trained in, how a plan's developed, all that stuff. And the other thing I always see, and I'll go away from the rescue for a minute, is a poor section on contractor management. How are contractors vetted? What do you expect from them when they come onto your work site? How do you decide if they're prime or not? Who's reviewing their paperwork before they start? That's the other big thing I'd encourage you to go back and have a look at, is if you're hiring contractors a lot, how do they fit into your confined space program? Okay. Procedures used for space-specific controls, so the fall protection, okay? What should your rescue plan include? So here's some basic things. Scope plan overview. I have right on top of my rescue plan, this is for a non-entry rescue. This is for an entry rescue with potential spinal. There'll be a lot more details, but right away it hits you in the face. I know what sort of manpower I'm looking at. What are the roles and responsibilities? So I always like to put a number. What are the minimum number of rescuers required for rescue? So if it's a non-entry rescue, I'll say one, and that person could be the rescue leader, the rescuer, the first aid, that's fine. But if it's an entry rescue, I'll say minimum two. You need a rescue leader in standby, and the second guy needs to be a rescuer. If I need help pulling a rope, I'll just keep adding to it. But I always like to put minimum how many people required to have a successful rescue. I think a lot of workers struggle with that. They want to do a good job. Everyone wants to, but you need to support them in that and also authorize them to have the right amount of people on site. What's the required equipment in general and PPE? Okay, that should be in the rescue plan. And I always put in the rescue plan, also the hazard assessment and entry procedure must be reviewed. To me, I write a rescue plan to complement those. It shouldn't be a standalone. Set up before rescue. So my whole rescue plan is a whole section on what to do before entry even begins. People just think about the rescue. Well, what do I want the rescue team to do before the guy's even in the hole working? And that's gear set up. We have a toolbox talk, all that good stuff to remind them what they need to do. And after a while, they'll memorize it. Okay, and actions on initiation of rescue. What to do when a rescue happens. How are we going to perform? What are we going to do? What's the roles? What does the rescue leader do? What does the standby person do? What does the rescuer do? Okay. So when I'm planning for an entry, okay, has a drill been conducted within the last year for that type of space? That's what the regs say. So we're all getting together. We've got a meeting. We're planning for an entry, planning for a number of entries. When's the last time we did drill in this type of space? And I've seen WorkSafe lately, again, ask, I want to see a documented drill happen before this work begins. I want proof it's happened. Drills include the potential type of injuries. So what's your worst type of injury you're expecting in this space? If it's a fall, then I want you to do a drill for a fall. Don't just do a drill for indigestion. But yet you're expecting like a zip cut to the face, you're expecting full spinal, you're expecting someone contorted in the back corner, head down in a sump, right? If that's a potential, shouldn't it be? But let's say it is, you should be drilling for that. Necessary personnel and equipment available for the entry, and the required equipment serviceable. So last time I go to clients, yeah, we got SRLs, we're good to go, I'll get there. And none of them have been certified in the last year. Sorry, guys. Do I think it's probably safe? Yeah. But liability wise, I can't use it. It's not certified. It's not ready to go. Don't put your workers in a position where they feel they're using gear that's not ready to go. Have someone in charge of that equipment cache. Okay, so drills. So WorkSafe says a drill must be conducted at least annually. Okay. So are annual drills enough? What does everyone think? No. So drills mean time and money. I hear the managers cringing as I say drills because we all get together for a drill day. We probably spend 1 or 2 hours bullshitting. It's camaraderie. It's not bad, but it happens. Having a coffee, getting together, dragging our butt, getting the gear out, and maybe we'll get 2 drills done in an 8-hour day. Unless you got a really keen group top to bottom and we're ready to go. And that's not a bad thing. It happens. I like to do drills at the time of entry. So we're all set up. We're ready to go. We need a rescue team. We better have our gear. So once we're all set up, everything's fine. Space is safe. Yeah, cool. Okay. Go lie down there. Okay, we're going to do a rescue drill. How long should it take? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we're done. If it takes longer than that, we're not doing the entry that day and we're going back for some more rescue training. All the equipment setup is tied into my job. All the toolbox talks we just had is tied into my job. I'm not adding extra time to do a drill. And also a benefit, especially for like a 5 or 6 day major retrofit. All my guys on day one know exactly what to do for rescue for that entry. And everyone is super comfortable for that whole week while we're working because we just did a drill on day one. You're still doing a drill, right? So it's just how you apply that drill. Scheduling drill can be difficult and costly. Infrequent drills do not translate into effective training, learning, competency. We need to do them more often. Okay. Now, a drill also does not necessarily mean you have a full drill. A drill could simply mean, hey guys, set up the tripod, set up the winch, and lift that 50-pound jug up and down or lower it or change it into a winch. That's a micro drill. Maybe we're just going to have a first aid drill. Hey guys, we're doing a first aid drill on the floor today. So-and-so was in a confined space. Let's walk through it. Full live drills are good, but you can also fill in small gaps with quicker drills. And you still write them down. So preparing for an entry, back to that again, documents reviewed by the rescue team leader, especially if they're outside rescue team. SDS is reviewed. All equipment on site and serviceable. And are the right personnel available? Okay. Equipment been set up? Is it ready and deployable? Are we ready to go in that space? Is all the rescue gear we need ready? Or can it be just set up instantly? Rescue personnel donned in the required PPE. So if there's a lot of PPE to put on, I do not want to delay rescue because I got to put on my PPE that I already know I need to put on. It should be on you. So if you're going to have a rescue team roam around the site, at least one guy maybe, he's the rescuer, he's ready to go in that hole quickly. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I just want it to be effective. You decide. You're the one that needs to sleep at night to say, hey, I have effective rescue set up. Lockout. So I have a rule. When we do confined space entry, for myself, it is always group lockout. It is not 4 or 5 locks by 2 guys. The reason I do group lockout is if the fire department shows up, single lock, let's go. Because only the captain will put a lock on. Okay. The other thing about group lockout is for me, whenever we have an entry rescue where a rescuer may need to go into space, his lock is the first to go on and the last to come off. I do not want you fumbling around trying to find a lock when someone's having a jammer inside of a confined space. To me, that comes out of that rescue quad, time, dealing with it ahead of time. You should be fully locked out before the job even begins. If we're doing an entry rescue. Okay. Toolbox talk. Okay. So everyone has a right to know how they're going to be rescued. Everyone has a right to know how to be safe on site and what they need. Okay. So both the entrant and the rescue team benefit from discussing the rescue plan. A lot of times, oh yeah, the rescue team's over there. If we need them, we'll call them. No. There's 4 things I want to discuss in the toolbox, talk about rescue. Who are the roles? Who's the rescue leader? Who's the standby person? Who's the rescuer? Who's the first aid? Everyone should know. How will the plan be initiated? Is it air horn? Is it radio? Is it, hey, help? Hey, help's fine. But how are we going to initiate the rescue plan? How will an injured entrant be extricated from the space? I'm going to explain to the injured entrant how I'm going to get them out, not only to make them feel comfortable, but they can poke a hole in my plan now. Hey, man, that's not going to work. Why? Well, I'm actually on the other side of a huge pipe. Oh, I didn't realize that. Now I can pivot my rescue plan before work begins rather than, oh, shit, he's on this other side of the pipe, guys. How are we going to get him out? And then any limitations to the work process that are necessary to ensure the rescue is effective. So if it's just me on site, hey, you have to stay hooked up. You have to stay below the manhole. Or just one other guy on site, hey, we're not ready for a spinal. You need to be hooked up as you go up and down the ladder. You can disconnect at the bottom, but that should be discussed. I do not want my entrant to work in a way that makes my rescue plan ineffective. Okay. So during the entry, rescue personnel should not simply wait for an incident to occur. They should participate in the entry. That's why I like operators, rescuers who are operators. Okay. All personnel must remain active participants in the entry and work towards preventing an incident. Okay, some final thoughts, because I just got the 3, which works out. Okay, reduces risk. So plan for non-entry rescues, reduces risk to rescue team members if we don't need to go in. Decrease the possibility of a spinal injury for vertical entry because they're hooked up. Rescue team of 1 member is adequate for most non-entry rescues. So we should try to work in the way. It complements everything we're trying to do. Minimal training and maintenance of these skills is required to remain competent. Okay. And minimal equipment and management and maintenance of it. Pretty simple. Fall protection, less training for the rescue team if we always use Fall Pro no matter what when we're going in and out of a space with the ladder. My number is 4 feet. More than 4 feet, I want you hooked up. If it's more 4 feet, I'm going to need the tripod to get you out anyways. I may as well be hooked up. Now I get to practice with the gear while I'm hooking you up for work in case I need it for rescue. Just standard. Make it a standard. Less skill maintenance. Okay. Protects the entrant from a potential spinal injury. And remember, I may not even get you out of the space on a spine board. And if entrant was to slip during entry, highly likely they'll be able to continue their work or task if they're hooked up. Just slip, stop, catch their breath, on they go. And simpler and less equipment in the end. Okay, drilling. Conduct a drill immediately before entering the space to begin work. At least quarterly is what I look for. Have at least shorter quarterly drills rather than full 1 day annually to maintain the skills. So lots of short bursts rather than really long 1 day a year, 8-hour ones. And micro-focus drills are an effective strategy. I talked about that. Fine-tuning entry procedures, the little things that count. No free climbing in the confined space over pipes. I'm talking decent pipes, guys, not. Wear a harness at all times. Wear a helmet with a chin strap. So I got a lot of guys I work with wearing cask or Petzl. If you slip and fall, you still have a hard hat on. You're not banging your head off a pipe. Okay. Simplify the entries. Rely on a smaller rescue team. Reduce the need to enter the space. We're all trying that these days. Minimize the equipment required. And less training required to perform the necessary rescues by simplifying things. Okay. And less effort to keep your rescue team competent. Remember, that's a key word. Okay. So I got maybe 30 seconds. Any questions? No? Simple, straightforward. Online. No, nothing? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, sorry?
Just double checking for you.
Oh, okay.
Just give us one moment while it just loads up. There are no online questions.
Okay.
Current. Thank you.
Well, good. Okay. Okay. Thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate you coming. If you have any questions, reach out to Orca if you're interested. I don't charge for questions. I learn more from questions than you guys will ever learn from me. So I appreciate questions. Please reach out. Talk to some of the other operators around here that have worked with me before, and they can even pass on tips and tricks. It's just about us all getting home at the end of the day and being safe, and that's what's my paramount concern. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Thank you. All right, it's almost noon now, so I believe lunch is going to be served relatively soon. Looks like they've been setting up at the back of the room there. We'll take a couple minutes, and I think they'll be serving lunch, as I said. So thank you for coming. Thanks, sir. Jeez, for sure. I failed to tell you, it was actually used to be a hang rescue tech. Oh, that's right, yes. You too. No. Oh, you guys doing confined space. It's a much different job.